If your business collapses when you're on vacation, it's because you have helpers, not leaders on your team. I'm Melissa Franks, your On Call COO, and this is the Opt-in podcast where we go from surviving to thriving in business. And today, we are talking about how you can build a team so that your business runs mostly without you. That is the goal, after all, if you're looking for a business with high growth and to have time flexibility. The most often stated reason from entrepreneurs about why they start businesses. So I am sure that that also was one of the key drivers in your decision to take the big leap and stop working for somebody else and start working for yourself. I have a client who I started working with this year, and her goal when we started working together was to be able to take a vacation this year completely disconnected, completely removed from the business. And the reason that this was her goal was because she'd never been able to do it. She's had the business for nearly a decade, and every single vacation that she has had, she's been on client calls, she's been responding to questions from the team, she's been having to review things, she has been engaged. Maybe not as much as she would be if she wasn't on vacation. She still was unable to completely remove herself from the business environment while she was gone. In fact, after we started working together, we did kind of a soft vacation, if you will, where she took a few days off, and the whole goal was to be completely disconnected. Reality? She spent more time working on that vacation than she had the prior week that she was actually working inside of the business. And why? Because the team was so dependent upon her and her insight and her coaching and her decision making, and frankly, to be able to close a client, that she couldn't disconnect. And we knew right then that there had to be a better way. And so we sat down and we said, how are we going to get to this August goal? And we set a lot of clear milestones and priorities, a lot of decisions that had to be made, a lot of delegation that had to happen. And the good news is she was able to take that vacation with her family and be completely disconnected from the business. Even better, the business grew the month that she was gone. That's right, everybody beat their goals. So she was able to come back not only fully refreshed and enjoyed a vacation for the first time ever since she's owned the business, she also came back to a business that was a little bit healthier than it had been when she left. And that is what is possible for you too. I promise. There's just some things that you need to really focus on, some decisions that you need to make, and some actions that you need to change in order to bring that out and make it a reality. Now, the question always is, why does this keep happening to me? I plan the vacation, I tell my team, I send everybody out. Why does this keep happening to me? And we're going to answer that question right now, here and now. We're going to answer that question. The reality is that your role as the CEO, as the business owner, as the founder, is to be the strategist and the visionary and to be focused on growth. Once you start hiring people into your organization, even if they are contractors that are with you for a long time, your job is to stop firefighting and start thinking big. And we have been talking about this for weeks, so this is no new topic to you. If you have been here listening to the podcast religiously for the past few weeks, you know that this is something that I will continue to talk to you about, because in order for your business to grow, you have to stop firefighting. It's just the reality. And quite honestly, the business should have less fires the bigger you get, because you're more stable. You understand how to scale. You can address things. You have other decision makers in the business. When you are firefighting, you are the bottleneck. And when you are the bottleneck, do you know what happens? Growth literally stops in the business. If you're making every decision, if you are in every conversation, what you've actually done when you've hired your team is you have hired a team of doers. You've hired a team of helpers. You haven't hired a team of leaders. Now, you may be sitting here thinking right now, well, I don't want to listen to this anymore because I'm not going to fire everybody. That's not what I'm encouraging you to do. What I'm encouraging you to do, and what we'll talk about in this podcast today, is how to shift the culture of being a helper into a culture of everybody as a leader in their own right, and how you can do that now in order to buy back your time in your business on a daily basis and when you want to check out and go on vacation for a few weeks. It's possible to do both. The bottom line is that a scalable business requires that the team can operate independently. It requires that those people working for you have authority and autonomy and good judgment. In order for the business to grow sustainably, long-term, at scale, this foundationally is critical. We can absolutely talk about processes, we can absolutely talk about technology. At the end of the day, as they have said for eons, you are only as strong as your weakest link. And that always comes back to people. Even in the world of AI, even in the world of automation, even in the world where maybe you don't need as many people as you would have 10 years ago, you still need people to run your business. Innovation, creativity, human connection, those all require people and can never, ever be replaced by a bot or a GPT. I just want to set that out there. So if you're sitting here and you're like, I have a good team and they have good judgment and they operate independently, and you're wondering, am I a bottleneck? Like, how do I know? Am I really, do I get in the way? We're going to talk about that right now. Here's the first sign that you're the bottleneck. You're copied on every email. Every single one. Hey, maybe customer service isn't copying you because there's a lot of scripts that you've written, but if you're copied on every internal email, if you are in every Slack channel, if you are getting barraged with just want to keep you in the loop sort of communication, you're the bottleneck. If you have an environment where an action cannot be completed, a milestone cannot be achieved, a decision cannot be made at any level without you approving, you're the bottleneck. If you answer the same question over and over again, if you have thought ever once, why can't they just use their brain? If you have ever thought this can't be this hard, you're the bottleneck. If you can't take time off, even a day, without being interrupted on Slack or getting an email or getting a text or getting a phone call, you're the bottleneck. I want to talk to you about a founder that we have been working with for quite some time. This founder has a very strong desire for their business to run completely independent of them, and they are there from a brand and a strategy and an innovation perspective. That is the only role that they want. I kind of refer to that often as like the chief creative officer, so to speak. They want to live in that land of big vision, ideation, cool ideas, etc. They do not want to live in the land of fulfillment and supply chain and distribution and people management, at all. And so we came in to take care of all of that running of the business stuff so that the founder could really be the chief creative officer. We laid out a plan. We laid out a migration plan on how to actually pull the founder out of the day-to-day tasks, because all those things that I just listed as bottlenecks, that was the founder in this business. And spoiler alert, the business was not doing well. The reason that they were looking for a fractional COO was because growth had not only stalled, but had taken a nosedive, and they knew something had to change. And so the plan really was twofold: improve the business results and pull the founder out of the day-to-day mechanics. We built a plan, we started executing against it. And then you know what happened? The mile marker kept moving. It wasn't the next mile marker is at a 1 mile interval. It became a 1.5 miles, and then it became 2. And can you imagine running a marathon where you're like, I thought this race was 26.2 miles and that I would see a mile marker at every mile point, but now I'm seeing a mile marker every 2 miles, and I just heard somebody tell me that this had turned into an ultra marathon and we were running 30 miles. When the goalpost moves, when the mile marker moves, when the finish line moves, because frankly, friends, you don't want to pull yourself out of the business, you can't get the results that you want. And so that was what was happening. And so we had to have a very transparent conversation about like, hey, you keep moving the mile marker and we can't do that anymore. And as soon as we eliminated significant dependency on the client, growth propelled in the right direction. It went up. And that was because what was actually happening is the business was slowing down, and there was a second guessing of everything. So we would make decisions and then get final confirmation and, go back to the drawing board. And things would take so long that we would miss opportunities. Things would take so long that kind of the plot twist had been lost. We didn't even really know what we were trying to do anymore. Things would take so long because there was a telephone game of things going on. And so the very best thing that we actually were able to do was isolate where involvement needed to happen for the founder and then let everybody else use their judgment and do their thing. The business sped up. There was more creativity and innovation with the team, and the founder was actually happier because they weren't in the weeds anymore. Sometimes you need to pay attention to what you're telling people about your business and what you're actually doing in the business and determine if they actually go together. If you were telling the outside world, I just wish I could be out of the day-to-day, I just wish I could be out of the weeds, I wish I wasn't needed so much, then you need to make sure that your behaviors are communicating that you trust your team and their judgment and their skills to operate without you. If you are telling the outside world that you want to pull back and you're telling your team by your actions that you're wanting to lean in, as this founder was doing until we made some adjustments, you're the problem. It's not them. They're fully capable. You have trained them. There's this saying that I learned in a communication class I don't even know. It was like 2001. And the saying in the communication class was, you treat others how to treat you. And so if you don't want to be the bottleneck if you do not want to be in the business all of the time, yet you are, through your actions, making sure the team understands you have to approve everything and you have to decide everything, guess what? That's going to become your reality. If you say you don't want to be in the business every day and you empower them to make decisions, you give them authority and autonomy, you trust them, you won't be in the business every day. That's literally how it works. It's as simple as that. So I'm sure you're wondering now, okay, I get it. I have trained them to behave this way. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. This completely sucks. Like, how? Melissa, tell me what to do. Good news. We have a framework for that. And y'all know I don't believe in frameworks. Like, it's not my jam. I feel like every team that we work with, every organization that we work with, we understand best practices, we understand frameworks, we understand all that good stuff out there, and then we always customize things a little bit. So the caveat with this framework is you take what works for you and you leave behind what doesn't. I don't know you. You're a stranger on the internet, and I don't know your business. So these are general guidelines that you really need to assess and say, hey, that could work here, and implement it. Or, hey, not really, so I'm gonna push back on that. I'm gonna do something different. Okay, just the caveat here. So this framework is relatively simple. The very first thing that you need to do is you need to create clear roles and accountability. Clear roles and accountability. That is right. You need to make sure that everyone understands. Everyone. Contractors, freelancers, employees, your spouse if they're in the business, your family member if they're in the business, like every single person needs to understand exactly what they own. The best way, the best place to start when you do this is to make sure everybody has a job description, to make sure that they are accurate and that they reflect responsibilities and how performance is going to be measured. You should be looking at job descriptions at least once a year. If your business is rapidly growing, and by rapidly, I mean you have 3x, 4x, 5x your prior year and it's still mid-year, you need to look at job descriptions significantly more often than that, because your organization should be changing as quickly as your growth is occurring. The best practice is look at them once a year. The best practice is look at them once a year when you're evaluating performance and you're having salary conversations and you're doing all of those things. That's the best practice. So make sure everybody has a job description. Make sure that the responsibilities are very clear and in simple language that they understand. And make sure there's performance metrics. Now, this second piece is incredibly critical. You need to ensure that there is no overlap, that there is no ambiguity. Why? Because then it means everybody's operating in their lane. The third thing that you need to do with that is you need to make sure that the team understands the dependencies. So you get those job descriptions written, you literally lay them all out in front of you, you make sure that there's no duplication, and then you say, like, and how do these things work together? Who's dependent on who? Who starts something and hands it off where? And you actually communicate this. You sit everybody down and you're like, hey, everybody, here's the job descriptions for everybody. Everybody should have access to all of the job descriptions for everybody so that everybody understands the boundaries. Everybody understands what's expected. And then you have a very open conversation about how this actually happens in practicality, how the collaboration works, how the dependencies works. You really want them to understand how all of the puzzle pieces go together to build the picture. And you know what? You're the only one that can do that because you're the one that defined the roles and you're the one that wrote the job description. You're the one that hired the people and you're the one that knows how you want your business to work. They can't do that without you. Now, if you're struggling with that and you can't figure out how to make sense of all of this, then you absolutely need an operations executive like a COO to come in and help you really figure out how your organization should be designed, because that's really what this is. It's called organizational design. And the faster you can do that and then build a growth plan with org design in mind, the more stable foundationally your business becomes. Remember how I said above that everything starts with people? This is what I'm talking about. Now, you're probably wondering, like, once I do all of this, how do I figure out accountability? Accountability is performance metrics. Accountability is, how am I going to track that you are doing your job? What results, what data am I going to look at? Now, there's always a little bit of qualitative tracking as well, but specifically for accountability, you want to make sure that there's quantitative metrics that you can track so that you can have a very non-emotional conversation about whether you're doing it or not. I have one client who has repeatedly set performance metric goals that are quantitative and they have not been missed, and they've adjusted the person's roles and responsibilities multiple times and they keep getting missed. It allows us to have a conversation to say, like, hey, we've changed your role a bunch and no matter what we do, you can't hit the targets. So, like, maybe we actually really do have a skill problem instead of a metrics problem. It allows you to have those conversations. The second part of the framework is decision rights. And this is really who decides what, also known as authority. This allows you to kind of understand a decision hierarchy. A really great example of this in the corporate world is how travel policies work. And really what happens at like expense management. And it goes a little something like this. Everybody can book an economy airline flight with at least 7 days notice. Go for it, okay? If it's less than 7 days notice, you need to get your supervisor to approve it. If it's 7 days or more and you want to book an economy plus flight, comfort plus if you're a Delta flyer, you got to get your supervisor to approve. If you want to actually change the class of your ticket to business class, then maybe you need the director or the vice president to approve, and nobody's allowed to book first class, period, end of story. Full stop. And that's exactly how decision hierarchies are built in your business too. There are thresholds for each level. So employees at the bottom have a lower threshold for their decision-making authority. And then if you have middle management, they get slightly higher, and then executive management gets slightly higher, and then eventually you have final say over the big stuff, right? So when your team lacks clarity around decision rights, they can do nothing because they don't know who can actually make a decision and it will stick. Teams freeze when they don't know what they're empowered to do. This is incredibly important. After you figure out who's doing what and how they're dependent and how they're going to collaborate and like all the stuff, then you have to tell them who gets to make the call. You need to distinguish who decides, who executes, who addresses, and who just needs to be informed. In other words, you need to create kind of a RACI matrix. And this is another trick and framework that operators understand really, really well. You need to understand the activities and the projects, and you need to figure out really who is able to make decisions versus who then takes that decision and goes and does something with it, and who finds out about that decision and then consumes what's done. There is an entire life cycle around a decision, and once it is taken, there is a trickle of things that happen after that, all that impact your team. If you can empower people on your team to take decisions, then that entire workflow can be completed without you. And all you see in the end is the measurable result. Cool, right? So what you want to think about, if we use kind of an example of this, is that if you have somebody responsible for marketing in your business, they are empowered to set the ad budget. They're able to say, this is how much we're going to pay for advertising. And they will have a threshold. I'm allowed to pay up to $20,000 a month for advertising with these sorts of results, with this return on ad spend, with this customer acquisition cost, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the CEO doesn't need to have a say. If I want to spend more than $20,000, I need to get permission. If I want to spend more than $20,000 and the return on ad spend is good, I don't. These are the ways that you start to align authority with decision-making ability and create a structure for where you are brought in to make the decision at points where it matters. This also makes your decisions more impactful. If you're making all of the decisions, it waters down your authority. You want to delegate decision-making as early and often as you can because it actually speeds up how the business operates and improves quality over time. The third thing is systems and standard operating procedures. Yeah. You got to write stuff down. You have to take everything out of your brain. I don't know how else to say that. I was recently talking to a client who just expanded a part of their organization by adding somebody. And the very first thing that I said was, the good news is you have a bunch of recordings for what you do and how you do it. The bad news is nothing was written down. So there is no way to actually train this new person except having them watch the recordings. And so what we're going to do is have that person watch the recordings and then write it down. And then we're going to verify that what was written down is accurate. So in this case, the new employee is actually going to create the playbook, is going to create the processes, is going to create the standards. Ideally, you're creating those as you go so that when you hire somebody, they can start like this. What's going to happen now is that the onboarding process is going to take slightly longer because the person's got to figure all that stuff out first and then make sure that they can perform in the same way. So writing things down as early and as often as you can, get your team into a practice of if you've done it more than 3 times, you should write it down. Even if it's rough notes, we can always make it pretty later. But this ensures that there is a clear handoff. This ensures that if somebody is unexpectedly sick, this ensures if somebody has a family emergency, that things can still get done without that human in place. This is a risk mitigation activity as much as it is a way for you to buy back your time long term and create consistency in your business. All that systems really do is make execution repeatable and predictable. It's where consistency comes in. And then once you have the systems, then you can refine and become more efficient. It increases productivity. It decreases frustration. It makes sure that everybody understands the lay of the land and how things operate. The systems are not sexy, but you know what is? An increased profit margin. And that's what systems entail. If you think about it, Even building a system around how your team meetings are facilitated will save you time and frustration in the long run. If everybody understands what they need to communicate inside of a meeting and they do so, the meeting will be shorter, decisions will be faster, and everybody will get back to executing sooner than you think. Recently, I had a client who was struggling with timekeeping and did not know what her staff was doing. And she had 40 people working for her. So it was really problematic. And what we were identified is that we were running over on labor consistently. So it's actually costing the business money. They were paying more in labor than they were bringing in revenue. It was a huge issue. And so what we did is we established a couple of new processes. We're working on the timekeeping cleanup and some things over there. And one of those was for every time they made a time entry to communicate what it was for in a memo. There were 96 entries the first week that we implemented this that did not have a memo. When we explained the importance of it and actually did quality check, there were only 9 the following week. And what's even better is that when we explained the framework for the standing meeting that we have every week to make sure that we understand everybody's priorities, the meeting was scheduled for an hour. We expected it to run long. It ended in 30 minutes because everybody knew what was expected of them. The process was consistent, and now we're able to verify timekeeping because we have the data and the input that we need. When you define the process, when you follow it, when you model it, and when you hold people accountable to participating in it, everything gets more efficient. You have more clarity, and the good news for this business is we are getting labor back in line with revenue being allocated. It's a win-win for everybody. We're increasing the profit margin by implementing systems. Yes, we're paying a little bit more because we have the standing meeting now. We're saving so much money in the long run. And that's what can happen for your business too. And then the fourth part of the framework is leadership development. If you have somebody working in your business that has a title of manager or director, they need to be leaders. They need to not just task assign to others. Not only that, they need to not be doers 100% of the time. In small business, there's a lot of fluidity with like titles and responsibilities and all of those things. I get it. I work with small businesses all the time. I have a small business. If you are titling somebody as a manager or a director in your business, they are leaders first and they are doers second. And when they are being leaders, they are coaching, they are encouraging, they are leading by example, they are making decisions, they have authority and accountability. You have empowered them to operate as in your absence, so to speak. You need these people to emulate leadership. You need them to be able to reiterate the vision. You need them to be able to hold strong to the culture. You need them to make sure that there is consistency in client experience. They need to be the monitors of the classroom, so to speak, while also encouraging and uplifting and ensuring that things get to the finish line. While they are doing work, what they're doing is really leading others to execute. And what that means is that you need to make sure that there is room inside of their roles, if they are supervising other people, either directly or indirectly, that they have time to lead, that they have time to coach, that they have time to give feedback. If you fill their plate up with doing, then all you have is somebody that's more expensive than the rest doing the same things. Practically, this means that you're investing in training. It means that you are actively coaching them. It means that you're observing how they are leading others and you're giving them feedback on leadership and management, not on the quality of the output of the work that they're doing. And it means that you're holding them accountable. It means that you're also demonstrating to the team below them that there is an expectation of accountability for them and that ultimately your manager and your director are accountable for the results of the people that work for them. And you need to be able to demonstrate that and show them that too. When you feed into your managers, when you ensure that they have the right skill set, when you can ensure that they know how to lead and manage people, you buy back so much time. The big labor inside of a business is the management of the people. It's ensuring that they continue to grow and flourish. It's keeping an eye out to see if you've got the right person but the wrong role, or the right role and the wrong person. That takes so much of your time. And if you can focus your time on the very top leaders in your business and empower others to do that in your stead, then it means that you're going to have more A performers in your business than B or C. It means that you're going to have a stronger culture, that employees are going to trust each other, that they're going to want to perform and be loyal. This pays it forward in dividends that cannot be measured except by the longevity of sustainable growth in your business. And frankly, how your brand is received in the marketplace. Because after all, employees, contractors, and freelancers that work for your business are just as much of a business card for you as your clients you support, as the people that buy your products. And you need to remember that they are a representation of you. And if they are not performing, if they are frustrated, if they are misaligned to the culture because they lack touch from you because your managers aren't doing it, it's going to negatively impact your brand over time. So here's the payoff, because that's what we care about, right? The payoff is that you, the CEO, can finally focus on vision and innovation and relationships and do what you're best at. If you are your company's best salesperson, the end, it allows you to sell more. If you have all of these ideas that you want to chase and you have no time to do it, and you know that it could add to your business, that it could expand markets, etc., you're going to have time to do that. You know what else? If you want to exit your business at some point, if you want to sell it to somebody else, if your retirement plan is that like the employees buy it back and it goes, your business becomes sellable when you're not integral, when you stop being the key person and the business can operate without you, the value of your business intrinsically goes up. You do not need to increase top line revenue or increase profit margin in order to have a more valuable business. All you have to do is remove the reliance on you. It is such a ninja move for anybody that's ever thinking about selling their business to somebody, because it's the first thing that a buyer will ask. Can this function without you? And what does that look like? And then the next thing is that you create a culture of ownership and accountability. So as new employees are onboarded, it's just the expectation. It's just the way that we do things here. And frankly, because it doesn't happen in so many places, especially in the corporate world, it's advantageous and you can get better talent because it's true. And finally, and likely most important, is you're going to get your life back. You're going to be able to actually go on a vacation and be on a vacation. You're going to have free time to think and ideate and dream and remove mental fatigue and decision fatigue. Probably going to be a nicer person overall too. I bet you. Your personal relationships will also benefit. So here's what you do. If you're not sure where you fall on the spectrum of bottleneck or not bottleneck, audit where you're the bottleneck. We went through all of those ways that you can identify that you're a bottleneck at the top of this podcast. Pick one decision this week to delegate fully. Just one. And do it week over week until you're out of things to delegate. Create a standard operating procedure or system or process for a repetitive task that your team still brings to you consistently. If there is a question that you're getting asked over and over and over and over and again, or a decision that's repeatable, write it down. Get it in a document. Give them a resource so they can figure it out on their own. And then make sure that you communicate decision rights to your team so that they understand who can take what decision and who to go to within the greater team to make those decisions so they don't need to come to you. The bottom line is that building a self-sufficient team requires clarity, empowerment, systems, and leadership development. It's the framework that we worked through. In the end, true leadership is measured when the CEO isn't in the room. Culture is what happens when nobody is watching. You know what sort of leader you are based on what happens when you are not around. So, as we walk away from this podcast today, I would love for you to consider what's one area where you know that you're the bottleneck. Just noodle on that a little bit. And then if you feel like sharing, I would love to hear. I'm interested to see if everybody's kind of landing in the same place or if we have bottlenecks that run the spectrum. Until next time, friends, please know that you are wise, you're capable, and you are strong, and I believe in you. Now, go delegate something before the day is done.